Welcome to the Stuff You Should Think About podcast, where I answer everyday questions about phenomena and objects. I'm G. How's everybody doing? Well, I hope everybody's having a good day and hope your day went the way you wanted it to go. Today, we're going to talk about body armor. And this is one of those things where people kind of know the movie version of it, but not always the real world version. So, plain and simple, body armor is protective gear meant to reduce injury from threats hitting the body. That can mean bullets, knives, or other hard objects. Reduce injury is the key phrase there. Not erase danger, not make somebody untouchable, just lower the chance of serious harm, depending on what kind of armor it is and what kind of threat hits it. And I think that's where people get tripped up. They hear body armor like it's one thing. It isn't. It's really a category. Different armor is built for different jobs, and if you use the wrong kind for the wrong threat, then that's definitely going to be a problem. The two big buckets are soft armor and hard armor. Soft armor is more flexible. It's usually made from strong layered materials that can catch, spread out, or slow a hit. This is the type people often picture under a shirt or a vest. It depends. It moves with you a little better. It's generally associated with protection from some lower energy threats, especially certain handgun rounds, depending on the design. Hard armor is a little different. That's the stiffer stuff, usually plates. Those plates go on the carriers or are built into protective systems, and they're used when the threat is more intense. Hard armor gives you a more rigid barrier, and that's what matters for higher energy impacts that soft armor usually isn't meant to handle. Now, there's also knife protection and spike protection to think about. And this is where, again, I just don't have time for the myth version of it. People assume if something stops a bullet, it must also stop a blade the same way. Not necessarily. A sharp object concentrates force in a very small point. So, armor for edged or pointed threats may be designed differently than armor meant mainly for bullets. So, if you're trying to understand body armor, the easiest way to think about it is what threat is this trying to defeat and what trade off is it making to do it? Flexibility, weight, coverage, comfort, all that kind of stuff. Because armor is not just strong or weak, it's specific. It's built with a purpose, and once you start there, the whole subject gets way less confusing. If you go way back, body armor started pretty intuitively. People covered themselves with what they had: leather, layer fabric, then metal pieces and plates. The basic idea wasn't complicated. If weapons are hitting bodies, put something tougher in front of the body. Kind of makes sense. The early armor had a big problem, though. Protection usually came with weight, a lot of weight. Metal armor could do a lot against the weapons of its time, but it could also slow a person down, wear them out, and make movement harder. And, movement matters basically. I mean, if your protection is incredible, but you can barely move, that's kind of its own issue. As weapons changed, armor had to change too. That's really the whole history in one line. Better weapons pushed armor makers to rethink materials. Stronger projectiles, more force, more speed. Those things made old protective methods less practical or less effective. So the search became, how do you get protection without burying a person under a pile of weight? And that pushed design toward lighter, stronger materials. Instead of relying on only thick material, modern armor started using advanced fibers and, for harder protection, ceramic based approaches and other rigid materials. The goal was not just stopping threats, it was stopping threats while still letting the person move, breathe, work, drive, run, kneel, all that stuff. Military needs shaped a lot of this. Soldiers may face a wide range of threats in changing environments, so armor had to balance protection with endurance and mobility over long periods. Law enforcement shaped it too, but often in a different way. Officers might need gear that can be worn for long shifts under clothing or in ways that don't make daily movement impossible. So, comfort, concealability, and practical wear time became a bigger deal. Then you have civilian self protection, which has its own influence. Civilian users are usually not looking for battlefield gear in the everyday sense. They may be thinking about personal safety, specific risk concerns, or something that can be stored, transported, or worn more discreetly. So design gets shaped by those needs too. Maybe lower profile, maybe easier to wear, maybe focused on a narrow set of likely threats. I guess the way I feel, the evolution of body armor is really a story about pressure from both sides. Weapons got more demanding, and users kept saying, yeah, but I still need to function. I still need to move. I still need to do my job. And so armor kept changing. Not into one perfect solution, but there isn't one really, but into a range of solutions built around specific risks and real human limits. So let's get really practical. What can body armor do? Soft armor can stop or slow some handgun rounds, depending on the armor and the round. That's the broad idea. It works by managing that impact through layers of material. But when people hear that, they sometimes jump straight to, okay, so armor is armor. No. Rifle threats usually call for harder plates because the energy involved is generally much greater, and that changes what kind of barriers needed. That's one of the biggest distinctions to keep clear in your head. Soft armor and rifle protection are not the same conversation. They overlap in the big category of body armor, sure, but they're built around different levels of threat. Now, for the part that matters, maybe the most, armor does not make someone invincible. I know that sounds obvious, but people still kind of treat it like a magical shield. It isn't. Coverage matters. If a section of the body isn't covered, armor can't help there. Fit matters too. If armor doesn't sit where it's supposed to sit, that's a real problem. Movement can shift things around. A bad fit can leave gaps or make the gear harder to wear correctly. Angle matters as well. How a threat hits can affect what happens, and then there's blunt force. Even if armor stops penetration, the energy has to go somewhere. So a person can still be injured by the impact itself. That's a really important point, and I think it's one people skip because it's less flashy than the yes or no question of whether something went through. There's also the simple reality that more protection usually means more weight, more bulk, and less comfort. And all of that kind of stuff affects whether someone can actually wear the armor for the time and task they need. If gear is too heavy or too restrictive, mobility stops. Fatigue goes up. that can create different risks. So the key takeaway is not armor solves everything. It's more like this armor is a trade off between mobility, weight, and a level of protection needed. That's the center of it. You choose based on likely threats, how long it has to be worn, how much movement is required, and what limits you're willing to accept. And that's really the grown up version of the topic. Useful, important, but not magical. Just equipment with strengths, limits, and a job it's trying to do. Anyway, that's it for this episode for today. I hope it helped clear up some stuff. And we'll get into another everyday object or phenomenon next time. I'm G, and I'm out.